Hi everyone, it's Emma from Air Learners. Today we're going to go through the Year 5 Language Conventions Preparation PowerPoint. We're going to go through some tips and tricks, and then we'll also go through some NAPLAN style questions. Feel free to pause the video at any time, and remember to note down anywhere where you may get stuck, so you can get help from an Air Learners tutor, a teacher, or a parent. So let's head into our first question. So this kind of question is really common in our NAPLAN tests. So it's asking us to write down the correct spelling for the circled word. So firstly, we need to read the sentence. The money is in the vault. So we need to firstly sound out our incorrect word. Vault. There's one syllable in this word. So we need to figure out what is the missing letter in this word. Vault. So let's write out some possible spellings that it might be. Vault, vault, vault. So now we need to think about the context that this word is in. The money is in the vault. So it's going to be a vault that you might see in a bank where they store all of the precious money, or jewels in a jewelry store, that kind of thing. So we can eliminate this first one because we know that V-O-L-T, vault, is to do with electricity. So now out of these two, we need to figure out what is the correct spelling. So the first one there is the correct spelling, vault, with the U in it. So my tip here is to always sound out the word and sound out the sentence. Read out the sentence in your head, of course, so then you can provide context to the word that you're trying to spell. And always try and find out how many syllables there are and try and hear for a missing letter or missing letters in the sentence. So let's head on to our next question. So we have our first tip. Tip number 1 is to sound out the words in your head, of course. So what you should do is you should split up the word into syllables and then try and sound out each syllable, listening for any missing letters, and then try and spell it out. This technique can be great to find the correct spelling, and it can also help you identify an incorrect word in the sentence, because you may receive a question that asks, identify the incorrect word and write the correct spelling, which we will see an example of in the next slide. But in that scenario, you don't actually know what the incorrect word is, so we'll go through a process to find that one out. So here we'll read out the sentence. The women owned a business. Now we have to find the incorrect spelling, and then we have to write the correct spelling in the box below. So let's go through each word in the sentence, and we'll try and see whether or not it's spelled correctly or incorrectly. So the is spelled correctly, women is spelled correctly, owned is spelled correctly, A is just the letters, of course, is spelled correctly. So business here is the incorrect word. So now let's split it into syllables. It'll go business. So what we're missing here is an S, because you can hear it in the first syllable, business. So let's write out some possible ways to spell it. So now let's go through each possible spelling and we'll try and identify whether or not it's correct. So business, maybe. Busness, no. Business, yes. And then also busness, no. Because we need our I in there. So the correct spelling is the third one there. And we'll write that in here. Business. So my tip for this kind of question is to do the process that we just went through. Go through each word in the sentence, identify whether or not it's correct or incorrect, and then once you find the incorrect word, sound out the syllables, find out how many syllables there are and sound out each syllable, and then try and listen for the incorrect, where a letter might be missing or there's too many letters, and then go through this process. So let's head on to the next slide. So what is an adjective? An adjective is a word which describes a noun. That looks awesome. Her cat is big. The ocean waves are calm today. So our adjectives in these sentences are the words that are underlined. And this is important because you might get a question that asks, which of the following sentences has an adjective in it? And you're going to have to identify the adjective in the sentences. So it's really important to have some good examples of what an adjective is. So let's come up with some. So that is great. Another example is, the food is tasty. You are perfect. So those are some examples of adjectives. You should come up with a list on your own, maybe stick it up on your wall or on the back of the toilet door. So then you can just get used to what they are and you can easily identify them in a sentence. So let's head on to our next slide. I read blank times a week. Now the question is, which word makes the sentence above make sense? So let's put each of these words, these 4 words, into the sentence where this blank box is and see if it makes sense or not. So I read often times a week. Does that make sense? No, it does not. I read multiple times a week. Does that make sense? It does to me. So let's put a little cross there and a tick here, but let's continue on just in case. I read never times a week. Does that make sense? No. Or I read always times a week. Does that one make sense? No. So the answer here is I read multiple times a week. So let's fill in our little bubble. And that there is our answer. So questions like these, you should always just go through each possible answer and try and eliminate some. But you should, if you say you thought that often was the correct word, you should always go through each possible answer just to double check that you have the correct one. All right, let's head on to the next slide. Which sentence is correct? Claire hears a cat meow. Claire heard a cat meow. Claire heard a cat meow. And Claire hears a cat meow. So firstly, our first difference in these sentences is heard and hears. And that's just past and present tense. So that's okay, we can ignore that for now. Now, our next spelling difference is cat or cat. Which one is spelled correctly? It's C-A-T is spelled correctly. So we can just go ahead and eliminate this second answer because we know that that's incorrect. Now, our next spelling difference is meow, or meow with an A. So we already know that meow is spelt with an A. So we can eliminate that one right there. Now, Claire hears a cat meow, or Claire heard a cat meow. So in this context, we need to think about, should it be past or present tense? And in this example, it's past tense. So Claire heard a cat meow. So in times like these where it's kind of tricky to tell which one's which, you should always just go through and think, is it going to be present or past tense that makes the most sense in this example? So let's head on to our next slide. Punctuation 101. So firstly we have apostrophes. An apostrophe, which can be seen here, can be used to connect two words in order to make a shorter one. So examples are do not, which equals don't, she is, which equals she's, they had, which equals they'd, they have, which equals to they've. So those are just some examples. Now we have commas. Commas, which are seen here, which look kind of like an apostrophe, but flipped over on the bottom. So commas have many uses, including to separate a series of words, to connect two independent clauses, to separate phrases, and to avoid confusion. So here we have an example. Let's eat grandma. You don't want to eat your grandma, that's not very nice. Or let's eat grandma. So here the second one is correct, which is why having a comma is really important. So we're on to our fifth question. Speaking of punctuation, which sentence has proper punctuation? Maddie went to visit her friends, Alicia, Tara, and Phoebe. Maddie went to visit her friends, Alicia, Tara, and Phoebe. Maddie went to visit her friends, Alicia, Tara, and Phoebe, or Maddie went to visit her friends, Alicia, Tara, and Phoebe. So we can already eliminate two of these sentences because one of them has absolutely no commas and the other has only one comma, which isn't helpful in our scenario. So we can eliminate this bottom one here because it's a very bad line, sorry. We can eliminate this bottom one here because it's got no commas at all, and we need a comma to separate the names. And then we can eliminate this second one. It's only got one comma. Now we need to figure out if this comma here, sorry, not that comma. We need to figure out if this comma here is useful or not. Okay, so let's read out these sentences. Maddie went to visit her friends, Alicia, Tara, and Phoebe. Or, Maddie went to visit her friends, Alicia, Tara, and Phoebe. So they sound basically the exact same, but we don't actually need a comma in that position, which means that our first answer here is correct. All right, let's head on to the next slide. So here we have tip number 2, and it's to reread the question twice before answering it, because often we might misunderstand the question and as a result enter the wrong answer. We also might misread the question. Since there are so many different questions that might be asked during this test, it's really important to ensure that you understand what the question is asking. So let's head on to our next slide. What is a verb? A verb is a word that describes an action. The doing word. So I drink water. She plays netball. They run fast. Another example of a verb is maybe they walk to the shops or ace the test. So those are two examples. So just try and keep, like the adjective list, keep a list of verbs, maybe on your wall or on the back of the toilet door, so then you can really easily identify what a verb is and examples of verbs. So let's head on to question 6. Which sentence needs a question mark? So a question mark is this symbol right here. That's a question mark. And it's used in its place at the end of a sentence to identify that a sentence has been asked. So let's go through each question and see if a question mark is needed. What breed is your dog? Is that a question or is that a statement? That's actually a question, so I think that might be the answer. But let's continue on and see, just in case we're wrong. Whichever dog we adopt will be adorable, question mark. Is that a statement or a question? That's a statement. We're taking our dog to the park, question mark. Is that a question or a statement? That one's a statement. And when we leave, we need to say bye to George, question mark. Is that a statement or is that a question? The first answer here is the correct option. Today's lesson, best of luck with NAPLAN and give it your best shot and keep working hard. Give the practice test a go, and if you get stuck with any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to one of the Air Learner tutors. I wish you the best of luck.